So let's now have a look at TV news, because that's what we'll be focusing on, news and current affairs in this course, because that's where journalism exposes itself to the world. TV news started out very much on the basis of radio. Radio in turn started out by announcers reading newspapers, and then journalists were brought into it, made their own news bulletins up. So the first television news stories was a person sitting there and talking, basically reading the news bulletin. Around that time there was a very strong newsreel culture in the movies. People would see what's happening around the world by seeing the newsreels before the feature movies when you went to the movies at a theatre. So there was quite a strong newsmaking culture there in film, and most of the film then was, well, it started out in 35mm, but then came to 16mm. In the 1970s, still very much television news was being driven by film, 16mm, and there was a particularly horrible film that was very cheap and very fast to process that was around in the late 70s, even in some networks into the early 80s, called VNF, or Video News Film. Something I'm sure Kodak would be quite happy to forget. There was also, around that time, U-matic, the first of the tapes. On air programs were being recorded, but on huge, back of a truck size videotape recorders, 1-inch and 2-inch tape, huge things that were rolling on. Around that time, U-matic came out. Now this is a tape, a U-matic tape. It wasn't used extensively in use for quite some time, but it eventually took over when an SP version, a much higher quality version, came out and was used. And that was when you may see in the old movies where the sound operator was always 2 or 3 person team in those days shooting television news. There'd be the camera operator, he'd be hooked up with a cable going to the recorder. The sound operator usually had the recorder, and he was controlling what was being recorded and also control the microphone and audio levels, and also the journalist, very different to the 1 and 2 people teams of today. In the late 70s, early 80s, a new system came out, and that was standard Betacam. Betacam has been the universal utility tape for television and news production. They come in tapes this big. You may or may not remember that Betacord was a domestic type of tape that tried to start out way back when, but was blown out of the water by VHS. The people in the know, the professionals, to this day will always say that the Betacord back then was better. This is actually a digital Betacam tape. So that's where it came through a process with Betacam, standard Betacam, Betacam SP, which was and still is a brilliant format. Then there was the digital versions. We've got DigiBeta, they call it, digital Betacam, SX, and other varieties, but still using the same cartridge. That's a Sony cartridge. Today, more and more, there is digital origination and transmission, where even in the 90s, I remember working in television, and beta carts were used. So you'd have, to put a news bulletin together, you'd have 14 of these all loaded up in a big beta cart machine that was fired from studio control. Now it's moved into the digital area, so everything's server driven mostly. So you'll find that they're playing straight out of computer hard drives versus from, again, controlled in studio control. Even in cameras now, there's a move to recording on Blu-ray, DVDs or hard drives. And so the changes in the digital revolution is very much hitting television news. So that's a bit of a look where television and television news has come from. That's the heritage of it. So in future weeks now, we'll settle down and we'll start making some television of our own. Thank you.